I took the night shift at Ridgeway Clinic because the pay was good, and I thought it would be easy. The place was small, a private medical facility that mostly dealt with post-surgery recovery patients. Just a few rooms, a break area, and a front desk. Quiet. Too quiet. By the time I started, the clinic had a reputation among employees. The nurses whispered about strange noises at night, about shadows moving in the security monitors, about patients who would wake up screaming but remember nothing in the morning. Some even quit after just a few shifts. But I wasn't superstitious. I figured it was just a bunch of overworked people scaring themselves. That was before I learned the truth. 2:13 a.m. the call light. It was my third night alone when I first felt it. The heavy silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the thick, suffocating kind, like the walls were listening. I sat at the front desk, scrolling through my phone, fighting off the drowsiness that always hit around this hour. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly above me. The security cameras flickered every now and then, but I chalked it up to bad wiring. Then, the call light flickered on in room 3. I glanced at the system screen to see which patient needed help. But my stomach twisted when I saw the details. Room 3 was empty. I double-checked the logs. No one had been in that room for over a week. It had been deep cleaned that morning. The bed was stripped, the monitors unplugged. There was no reason for the call button to activate. A cold unease crawled up my spine. I grabbed the room key, took a deep breath, and stepped into the dimly lit hallway. The air felt colder the closer I got to room 3. A sharp contrast to the warm, sterile scent of the rest of the clinic. My footsteps felt too loud, like the silence itself was swallowing them. The door stood slightly ajar. Just enough to see inside. The room. I pushed it open. The bed was neatly made. The 4 stand stood empty. The heart monitor was off. But the call button? It lay on the pillow, blinking red. I hesitated before stepping further inside. The overhead light flickered as I picked up the call button. Maybe it was just a malfunction. Maybe. Scratch. 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 The sound came from the bathroom inside the room. I froze. The door was slightly open, the inside cloaked in darkness. But I could hear something inside. Shuffling. A faint, uneven breathing. My skin prickled with cold sweat. Hello? My voice barely rose above a whisper. No response. Just the scratching, slow, deliberate, like nails against the tile. I reached for the bathroom door, my fingers trembling. I pushed it open just an inch more. The light inside flickered once, and I saw it. A glimpse of a face. Pale, contorted, twisted in an eternal scream, but completely silent. The eyes were hollow, dark pits staring straight at me. The mouth stretched open unnaturally wide, but no sound came out. I stumbled back, slamming into the bed. The light buzzed, flickered again. And the figure was gone. The intercom message. Heart pounding, I bolted out of the room, nearly tripping as I sprinted back to the front desk. I slammed the door shut behind me and pressed my back against it, gasping for breath. My mind raced with explanations. Was it a prank? A hallucination? Then, the intercom crackled to life. A wave of static filled the clinic, an unnatural buzzing that made my skin crawl. Then, beneath the distortion, a voice. Garbled, distant, whispering 2 words. Stay awake. The intercom clicked off. I stared at the speaker, my hands shaking. Somewhere down the hall, a door creaked open. I sat frozen at the front desk, my breath shallow, ears straining against the dead silence that followed the intercom message. Stay awake. The words echoed in my mind, twisted with the image of that horrifying, contorted face I had seen in room 3's bathroom. Then I heard it. A door creaking open down the hall. I swallowed hard and forced myself to move. Peering at the security monitors, I cycled through the different camera feeds. Each room. The hallways. The break area. Everything looked normal, except for room 3. The door was now wide open. But I hadn't heard footsteps. No one had walked past me. A cold sweat broke out on my skin. Then, something shifted in the farthest corner of the hallway. At first, I thought it was a glitch on the screen. A dark smudge in the camera's view, almost like a shadow cast by something that wasn't there. Then the shadow moved. I could barely make out a shape, tall, unnatural, wrong. It didn't walk. It glided. It slid across the floor like liquid darkness, slow and deliberate. Heading straight for me. I shot up from my chair, nearly knocking over my coffee. My hands scrambled for my phone, ready to dial security, but the screen froze. The numbers wouldn't respond. The call wouldn't go through. A sudden wave of drowsiness washed over me. My limbs felt heavy. My eyelids drooped as if something unseen was pulling me into sleep. The security monitors flickered, distorting. The dark figure was closer. I forced myself to move. Slapping my own face, I grabbed the nearest pen and stabbed the sharp tip into my arm. Pain jolted me back into clarity. The shadow stopped. It lingered just at the edge of the hallway, beyond the reach of the flickering overhead lights. As if it was waiting, watching. Then, it slowly began to recede, dissolving back into the darkness. The moment it vanished, my phone unlocked. The clinic's lights stopped flickering. The security cameras cleared. I stood there, shaking, as the intercom crackled once more. This time, the voice wasn't whispering. It was a low, gurgling growl. Don't sleep. By the time 4 a.m. hit, I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't sleep. Something was in the clinic. Something that waited for me to drift off. The moment my mind slipped into drowsiness, it got closer. I had to stay awake. I paced the front desk, chugging cups of bitter coffee, keeping every light on. I kept checking the hallway, the cameras, room 3. But nothing moved anymore. Until 4:27 a.m. The power went out. Total darkness swallowed the clinic. My breath hitched as I fumbled for my phone flashlight. The small globe barely illuminated the desk in front of me. Then, the security monitors flashed back on. Only one camera worked now, the hallway. And something was standing there. The shadow. But now I could see more than just its form. It was tall. Too tall. Its limbs were stretched, unnaturally long, fingers dragging against the floor. Its head was bent at an unnatural angle, as if broken. Its mouth was wide open, yet I heard nothing. Then, in a sudden, jerking motion, it rushed the camera. The screen glitched. Then silence. I held my breath, gripping my phone so tightly my knuckles went white. Then, a single, deafening knock came from the front desk window. I spun around. Nothing was there. The knock came again. Louder. More insistent. I lifted my phone, the flashlight beam trembling as I shined it toward the glass. A face stared back at me. The same twisted, silent, screaming face I had seen in room 3's bathroom. But now it was right in front of me. My body refused to move. My breath stopped. Then, slowly, the thing pressed its hand against the glass. Its mouth still wide open. Its hollow eyes locked onto mine. Then it whispered, its voice crackling like a distant radio signal. Sleep. The world around me blurred. My vision darkened. My body collapsed to the floor as the darkness swallowed me whole. I woke up in the break room. The morning shift nurse was shaking me awake, her face pale. You okay? She asked. I sat up, heart pounding, my body drenched in cold sweat. Yeah, I lied. Just tired. The clinic was normal. The lights worked. The monitors were fine. Room 3's door was closed. But as I gathered my things and turned to leave, I caught a glimpse of the security footage from last night. At 4:27 a.m., the screen showed me standing at the front desk. Alone. But the footage never showed the shadow. Never showed the thing that knocked. It only showed me. Standing still. Staring into nothing. And then, just before the video cut out, I lifted my hand and pressed it against the glass. I took the job as a night security guard at an old warehouse on the outskirts of town. The pay was decent, and the work seemed easy: watch the monitors, do a few patrols, and stay awake until dawn. But from my first shift, something felt wrong. The warehouse had been abandoned for years before being reopened as a storage facility. The owners told me it was a good deal: cheap rent, lots of space, perfect for businesses needing extra storage. But standing in that massive, empty building, surrounded by rows of towering metal shelves stacked with forgotten crates, I couldn't shake the feeling that the place didn't want to be used again. The air inside was damp, carrying the scent of mildew and rusting metal. The silence was heavy, broken only by the occasional creak of settling beams. My security office was a small, windowless room with a bank of monitors showing grainy black and white footage from cameras scattered around the facility. Some cameras flickered, others were completely dead. I made a mental note to tell my supervisor, but I doubted anyone would fix them. At around 2 a.m., I grabbed my flashlight and headed out for my first patrol. The warehouse felt even larger at night. My footsteps echoed off the concrete floor, the sound swallowed by the towering shelves. Every aisle stretched into darkness, the overhead lights dim and unreliable. Then, as I passed one of the storage sections, I heard it. A whisper. It was faint, almost inaudible, but it was there, a soft murmur coming from deep within the shelves. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. "Hello?" I called out, my voice barely above a whisper. Silence. I turned on my flashlight and aimed it down the aisle. Dust particles floated through the beam, but there was nothing, just rows of storage containers stacked haphazardly. My mind told me it was nothing, just the building settling. But as I started walking again, something moved between the shelves. A shadow. Quick. Darting. I gripped my flashlight tighter and stepped closer, sweeping the beam through the gaps between the crates. Nothing. Just as I exhaled, a loud metallic clang shattered the silence. I spun around, my heart hammering. A metal cart, the kind used to transport heavy boxes, was rolling toward me from a few aisles away. But there was no one there. I took a cautious step forward, shining my flashlight around the area. The cart slowed to a stop, its wheels squeaking one last time. I crouched down to inspect it. It wasn't dusty like everything else in the warehouse. Someone had touched it recently. Then, behind me, the whispering returned. But this time, it was different. It wasn't one voice. It was many. Soft, overlapping murmurs filled the air, too low for me to make out words, but urgent, insistent. They were all around me. I turned, spinning in place, my flashlight shaking in my grip. The shadows between the shelves seemed to move, shifting unnaturally. Then, the lights flickered. For a split second, everything plunged into darkness. And in that moment I swear I saw it, a figure standing at the far end of the aisle. Tall. Motionless. Watching me. The lights buzzed back on, and it was gone. The whispering stopped. And the only sound left was my own heavy breathing. I took a shaky step back toward the security office, trying to convince myself I had imagined it. But as I turned to leave, something on the floor caught my eye, something that hadn't been there before. A single, child-sized handprint, smeared in dust. I rushed back to the security office, locking the door behind me. My hands were shaking as I checked the monitors. The grainy footage flickered, some cameras still dead, but I focused on the ones that worked, scanning for any sign of movement. Nothing. No shadows. No figures. No whispering. But that handprint was still fresh in my mind. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe some kid had come in earlier with a worker. Maybe I had imagined the whispering, the flickering lights, the figure in the aisle. But deep down, I knew better. The minutes dragged. Every tiny noise made my nerves jolt. A distant creak? My breath caught in my throat. The soft hum of the lights? My pulse pounded in my ears. But nothing else happened. At 3:30 a.m., my nerves finally settled enough for me to attempt another patrol. Big mistake. I stepped back into the warehouse, flashlight ready. The air felt heavier, the silence deeper. The rows of shelves seemed taller, pressing in on me. As I walked past the spot where I had seen the figure, I forced myself to look at the floor. The handprint was gone. Not smudged. Not faded. Completely gone. I swallowed hard and kept moving. Then, just as I passed a stack of crates, a sound sent my blood to ice. A child's giggle. High-pitched. Playful. Echoing from somewhere deeper in the warehouse. I stopped dead, my breath catching in my throat. My flashlight beam wavered as my hand trembled. "Hello?" I called out. My voice cracked. No response. Then, a sharp, quick tapping from above me. I aimed my flashlight up. At the very top of the shelves, wedged between a row of dusty boxes, were two small, pale feet. They dangled there for just a second before disappearing into the darkness. I stumbled backward, nearly dropping my flashlight. I wanted to run. Every instinct screamed at me to get out. But before I could even move, the lights overhead shut off, every single one. I was plunged into darkness. The only thing left was the sound of bare feet slapping against the concrete floor, coming straight for me. And then, something grabbed my arm. I screamed and swung my flashlight wildly, the beams slicing through the darkness. My breath came in ragged gasps as I stumbled backward, my heart hammering in my chest. But there was nothing there. The grip on my arm had vanished, like it had never been there at all. The lights flickered once, then snapped back on, flooding the warehouse with their cold, buzzing glow. I was alone. But I knew I wasn't. My arm tingled where something had touched me. I looked down and felt my stomach drop. A small, red handprint was burned into my skin. A child's handprint. I staggered back toward the security office, my legs shaking. I needed to get out. I needed to quit this job and never come back. I barely made it to the office before something on the monitors caught my eye. One of the cameras, the one aimed down the longest aisle, was glitching. Static crackled across the screen, but in between the distortion, I could see it. A figure. Small. Motionless. Standing in the very aisle I had just come from. The camera flickered again, and suddenly, it was closer. Another flicker. Closer. My blood turned to ice. Then, for just a fraction of a second, the screen cleared, and I saw its face. A child. A girl. Her skin was gray, her eyes solid black, her mouth stretched into a too-wide grin. Then she moved. Not walked. Not ran. She lunged at the camera. The screen exploded into static, and at that exact moment, something knocked on my office door. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. I couldn't breathe. I turned, staring at the door, heart pounding in my throat. Then, from the other side, a voice, soft, small, and wrong. "Let me in." I ran. I didn't stop for my things. I didn't look back. I just ran. I quit the next morning. Didn't even pick up my final paycheck? But a few weeks later, curiosity got the best of me. I searched up the history of the warehouse. And what I found made my skin crawl. 30 years ago, before it was a storage facility, the building had been a factory. There was an accident. A 6-year-old girl, daughter of one of the workers, went missing inside. They searched everywhere, tore the place apart. But they never found her. Some people say she got trapped in the machinery. That her body was never recovered. But others? They say she never left. I had been working the night shift at St. Vincent's Hospital for almost 6 months. The pay was decent, and the work was easy, mostly just walking the halls, checking security cameras, and making sure no one was where they shouldn't be. But there was one part of the hospital that made my skin crawl. Wing C. It had been shut down for nearly a decade. Rumors among the staff said there had been a fire. Others said a patient went missing under mysterious circumstances. Whatever the truth was, no one wanted to go near it. But for some reason, the motion sensors in that part of the building still went off at least once a week. At first, I assumed it was rats, maybe a loose door swinging open. But the nurses swore they'd heard things from inside, whispers, soft knocking, a voice calling their name. I never took the story seriously. Until that night. 2:37 a.m., motion detected, Wing C. The alert buzzed on my radio, and I sighed. It was my job, after all. I grabbed my flashlight and walked down the dimly lit corridor toward the abandoned wing. As soon as I stepped through the heavy doors, I felt it. The air was different. Colder. Thicker. Like I was pushing through something unseen. The emergency lights barely reached this part of the hospital, leaving long, dark gaps between the flickering bulbs. My footsteps echoed against the tiles as I moved deeper in. I checked each room as I passed, empty. Room after room, just peeling paint and rusted bed frames. The smell of old antiseptic and mildew clung to the air. Then, as I reached room 309, I froze. At the very end of the hallway, a figure stood in the doorway. I gripped my flashlight tighter. It was impossible to see details, but whoever it was stood perfectly still, too still. "Hey!" I called out, trying to sound authoritative. "You're not supposed to be here." No response. Then it moved. Not like a normal person. Its head tilted sharply to the side, a sudden, unnatural motion. A chill ran down my spine. I swallowed hard and took a step forward. And then, it stepped backward into the room. I stopped dead in my tracks. No sound. No footsteps. It had just moved into the darkness, like it was waiting for me. My instincts screamed at me to turn around, to get the hell out of there. But my stupid curiosity, or maybe something else, kept me moving forward. As I reached the doorway, my heart pounded so hard it hurt. I hesitated, then shined my flashlight inside. Nothing. The room was completely empty. No furniture, no equipment, no one. I stepped inside, my breath coming faster. Where did they go? Bang! The door slammed shut behind me. I spun around, my flashlight shaking in my grip. I rushed back and grabbed the handle, locked. Then, from the farthest corner of the room, in the deep shadows where my flashlight didn't reach, I heard it. A whisper. It said my name. My breath caught in my throat. That voice, it knew my name. I spun, my flashlight darting across the peeling walls and cracked tiles. The room was empty. But I wasn't alone. Something was in here with me. I pressed against the locked door, my fingers slick with sweat as I fumbled with the handle. It wouldn't budge. My radio. I reached for it with shaking hands and pressed the call button. Static. I tried again. "This is Daniel. I need assistance in Wing C. I'm locked in a room." A pause. Then, a faint chuckle through the static. Low. Raspy. Not human. The hairs on my arms stood up. Then, the whisper came again. Closer. "Daniel, why did you come here?" My stomach turned to ice. I forced myself to breathe, to move. My flashlight beam shook as I swept it across the room. The light caught the far wall, nothing. The floor, nothing. The corner. Shadows. Something moved. It was pressed into the farthest corner of the room, crouching. Hunched. Too tall, too thin. And then, it crawled toward me. The beam flickered as I gasped and stumbled back. The thing's limbs moved in an unnatural, jerky way, like a spider with broken legs. I pounded on the door. "Let me out! Somebody!" The flashlight flickered again. And for a split second, I saw it clearly. Its face, hollow black eyes, stretched mouth, skin like rotting parchment. And its hands, its fingers were too long. Reaching. The flashlight died. The room went black. And then... breathing. Right. Next. To me. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. I could only listen as it breathed right beside my ear. Slow. Wet. Wrong. A single whisper, closer than before. "You should have stayed away." A hand touched my arm. I lost it. I lashed out, swinging blindly in the dark. My fist connected with nothing, but the air around me felt thick, heavy, suffocating. I fumbled for my flashlight, smacking it against my thigh. It flickered once, and then the room wasn't empty anymore. The thing was inches from my face. Its mouth opened, but instead of words, a horrible, choking noise poured out, like a man drowning in his own lungs. I stumbled back. My foot caught on something, and I fell, hitting the ground hard. And then, the door unlocked. I didn't ask why. I didn't hesitate. I scrambled to my feet and threw myself through the doorway. The second I crossed the threshold, the air changed. The heaviness gone. The cold gone. I turned back, my breath ragged. The room was empty again. The thing was gone. And the door I had just escaped from? It swung open on its own. I backed away. A soft sound came from inside the room. A whisper. "See you soon, Daniel." I ran. I never checked Wing C again.